In a land veiled by the mists of forgotten times, where ancient woods whispered secrets to those who dared listen, there ran a stream of such crystalline purity that it seemed to spin liquid silver over mossy stones. By this chattering water stood a mill, its great wheel turning with the slow, persistent rhythm of the seasons, grinding the grains of the humble folk who tilled the surrounding fields. Adjacent to it, nestled between a flowering hawthorn hedge and the ever-murmuring stream, stood the miller's cottage. The miller himself, a man named Thomas, whose kind eyes were crinkled from years of squinting into flower-dusted sunlight, possessed a treasure that outshone any golden coin. His daughter, Ilara. Ilara's beauty was the kind bards fumble to describe. It was not merely in her face, which held the gentle warmth of a sunrise, or her hair, which cascaded like ripe wheat kissed by autumn, but in a luminous grace that seemed to soften the very air around her. Yet her true marvel lay deeper. She possessed a shrewd, quiet cleverness. She could calculate a season's yield from the flight of birds, mend a broken loom with a song and a twist of wire, and brew remedies from forest herbs that could cool a fever or mend a broken heart. Thomas, in his boundless foolish pride, loved nothing more than to speak of her wonders. One crisp autumn day, as golden leaves pirouetted onto the millpond, the king's hunting party, led by the monarch himself, paused to water their steaming horses. King Thorin was a man carved from avarice. His eyes, the color of flint, missed no detail that could be taxed, and his heart, it was said, beat in time with the clinking of coins in his distant treasury. In a moment of folly, warmed by the king's passing attention and perhaps a horn of strong ale, Thomas puffed out his chest. "Your Majesty," he declared, gesturing to where Ilara stood in the doorway, "my daughter there has a gift so rare she can spin the very straw from our harvest into the purest gold." The words, once spoken, hung in the air like a spell. King Thorin's flinty eyes sharpened, stripping Ilara of her humanity and seeing only a living, breathing instrument of wealth. Greed, a dormant serpent in his breast, uncoiled. Without ceremony, he commanded his guards. 3 days later, a terrified Ilara was ushered into the cold, echoing vastness of the palace and led down winding stairs to a stark stone chamber. It was not a room, but a cell, dominated by a mountainous heap of ordinary straw. A single ancient spinning wheel sat before it like an accusation. "Your father boasts you can spin gold from chaff." Thorin's voice echoed, devoid of warmth. "Prove it. Transform this straw into gold by dawn's first light. Succeed, and you shall be honored. Fail." He let the silence, colder than the stone, finish his sentence. "As you love your life," he finally added before the heavy oak door thudded shut, the iron lock clanging with finality. Ilara's pleas had been waves breaking against a cliff. Alone, the immensity of her task crushed her. She touched the rough, dry straw, then the inert spinning wheel. Despair, thick and bitter, rose in her throat, and she sank into the dusty corner, weeping for her father's foolish tongue and her own doomed life. Suddenly, a soft pop, like a cork drawn from a bottle, sounded in the room. A small hidden door, cleverly woven into the stonework, swung inward. Through it hobbled the strangest creature Ilara had ever seen. He was no taller than a child, but wizened and old, his face a roadmap of wrinkles under a long pointed cap. His clothes were of mismatched leathers, and his eyes sparkled with a mischief that was ancient and sharp. "Good morrow, my good lass," he chirped, his voice like rustling parchment and cracking twigs. "What sets such a lovely fountain to flowing?" "Who are you?" Ilara gasped, scrambling back. "A friend, perhaps," he said, tilting his head. "Or a solution. I ask again, why do you weep?" She gestured helplessly at the straw. "I must spin this into gold by morning. It is impossible." "Impossible?" The little man chuckled, a dry, rattling sound. "Few things are impossible for the right price. What will you give me to do this task for you?" Hope, treacherous and wild, fluttered in Ilara's chest. She had nothing of value but the simple necklace of river-smooth stones around her throat, a gift from her mother. "This," she said, unclasping it, "it is all I have." He snatched it, held it up to the flickering torchlight, and gave a satisfied nod. A fair beginning. Without another word, he settled at the spinning wheel. As his gnarled hands touched it, the wheel seemed to awaken. He began to whistle a queer, lilting tune, then sang, round about, lo and behold, reel away, straw into gold. The wheel began to turn, not by his foot, but of its own volition, faster and faster until it was a blur. The straw stirred, then lifted as if caught in a silent wind. Strand by strand, it flew to the wheel, and as it passed through the invisible spindle, it transformed, stretching, brightening, shimmering, into a continuous, flawless thread of pure, soft gold. It coiled on the floor in a growing, gleaming mound. Alara watched, breathless, as the impossible unfolded before her. Before the first rooster crowed, the chamber no longer held straw, but a king's ransom in spun gold. When King Thorin entered at dawn, the reflected glow of gold lit his face with a terrifying rapture. He said not a word to Alara, only ran his hands through the cool metallic coils. His greed, far from being sated, was inflamed. That very evening, she was taken to a larger chamber with a heap of straw twice the size. Again, he commanded, his eyes feverish. Your reward will be greater. The door locked once more. This time, Alara wept not from despair, but from a dreadful understanding, and as before, the little door popped open. Back so soon? The mannequin grinned. What payment for this second service? She offered the silver ring from her finger, her last piece of finery. He took it, bit it, and nodded. Again he sat, again he sang his rhyme, and again the magic whirred through the night. By morning, another fortune awaited the king. Thorin's delight was a monstrous thing. Without a word of thanks, he led her to the castle's great hall. It was filled from flagstones to vaulted ceiling with a vast rustling mountain of straw. This is the final test, he breathed, his voice husky with lust for wealth. Spin all of this tonight, and with this gold as your dowry, you shall be my queen. The title struck her like a blow. Queen? Of this cold man and his golden prison? Yet the alternative was death. Alone in the cavernous hall, she awaited her only ally. He appeared, seeming almost to materialize from the shadows themselves. What will you give me for this third and greatest task? He asked, his glittering eyes knowing. You have no trinkets left. I have nothing, Alara whispered, the truth hollowing her out. Then promise me, he said, leaning so close she could smell earth and old spices on his breath, the first child you shall bear when you are queen. The world tilted. A child? A hypothetical future life for her own present one. That may never be, she thought wildly. She might never bear a child. The king might cast her aside. Faced with the towering straw and the dawn's certain threat, she clutched at the slender hope. I promise, she heard herself say, the words leaving her lips like stones falling into a deep well. His smile was swift and secret. It is agreed. For a third time, the wheel spun. The song echoed, and the hall was transmuted into a tomb of glittering, cursed wealth. True to his word, driven by the gold now lining his vaults, King Thorin married the miller's daughter. Alara became queen, adorned in silks and jewels, yet she lived in a gilded cage, the terrible promise a constant shadow on her heart. For a time, joy broke through. A son was born, a babe with his mother's bright eyes and a laugh like sunlight. In the bliss of motherhood, the shadow receded, the promise fading like a bad dream. Until the day the nursery fire danced wildly and the little man stepped from behind the tapestry unchanged, his pointed cap dusty with time forgotten. My queen, he said with a mock bow, I have come for what is mine. Terror, cold and absolute, seized her. She offered him chests of gold, the very gold he had spun, kingdoms, titles, anything. He merely shook his head, his ancient eyes unyielding. What use have I for more gold? I desire the child, a living, breathing treasure. Her desperate tears, genuine and torrential, finally moved him, not to mercy, but to a cruel sport. Very well, he conceded, I grant you 3 days' grace. If, in that time, you can discover my true name, you may keep the child. If not, he comes with me to my hearth. The first night, Alara lay awake, her mind a whirlwind of every name she had ever heard. She dispatched riders to the 4 corners of the kingdom, commanding them to collect every name, common and strange. The next day, when the little man appeared, she recited them. Are you Timothy, Ichabod, Benjamin, Jeremiah? To each he chuckled, "Madam, that is not my name." The second day, she grew desperate, listing the ridiculous and descriptive bandy legs, hunchback, crookshanks. His laughter was a dry rustle. "No, madam." On the evening of the third day, as hope dwindled to a dying ember, the last and weariest messenger returned. He spoke of a journey deep into the primordial forest, to a hill where foxes and hares bade each other good night. There, he said, he saw a crooked little hut, and before it a fire around which a funny little dwarf danced on one leg, singing a boastful song to the flames. "Merrily the feast I'll make, today I'll brew, tomorrow bake, merrily I'll dance and sing, for next day will a stranger bring. Little does my lady dream Rumpelstiltskin is my name." Alara's heart, so long clenched in fear, soared. When the little man arrived for his answer, she made a show of it. Seated upon her throne with her court gathered, the nurse holding her cooing babe nearby, she played her part. "Is it John?" she asked, her voice steady. "No, madam," he crowed, rubbing his hands. "Is it Tom?" "No, madam." "Is it Jemmy?" His grin was wide, anticipating his victory. "It is not." She let the silence stretch, then leaned forward, a sly smile touching her lips. "Then perhaps," she said, the word a key turning in a long-locked door, "your name is Rumpelstiltskin?" The change was instantaneous and terrible. The glee vanished from his face, replaced by a wrath of such cosmic intensity that the very torches seemed to dim. "Some witch told you that! Some witch told you that!" he shrieked, his voice no longer that of a quirky hobgoblin, but of something raw and ancient. In a fury that shook the stones, he stamped his right foot upon the palace floor. With a crack that echoed through the hall, the marble split, and his foot plunged deep into the stone up to his thigh. With a final, furious glare, he seized his own foot with both hands, wrenched it free with a sound of tearing rock, and hopped away through walls and shadows, gone forever. The court erupted in relieved laughter, the nurse beamed, and the baby crowed with delight at the commotion. As the cheers of "A good morning to you, Mr. Rumpelstiltskin," echoed behind him, the little man vanished into the world of forgotten lore, outwitted by the very human cunning he had sought to exploit, and Alara, holding her son close, understood that some promises are chains, but a name, once truly known, can break even the strongest magic.